Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I hope all of you all are staying safe, taking all the precautions that you all need to in this really crazy time that we are going through right now with the whole coronavirus. My name is Pranali. I'm from the Broadcast India show that's organized by Nürnberg Messe India. And I would like to extend a really warm welcome to all of you attending our webinar today on getting the perfect cinematic image. I would firstly like to start by thanking our partners, Cineom and ARRI, for their support in putting this together. We could not have done this without their help. Now, getting on to our speakers, let me start by introducing Mr. Mitesh Mirchandani, ace cinematographer of the Hindi film industry. He's also the alumni of the prestigious New York Film Academy, with films like Mirja and Uri the Surgical Strike to his credit. He is joined today by Mr. Philipp Chudalla, who is the Business Development Manager at ARRI, and who is best known for his work on Geostorm, Fata Morgana, and The Misfits. This webinar will be moderated by Mr. Manoj Madhavan. He is the editor of Broadcast and Film, a leading online publication serving the broadcast and entertainment and technology industry globally. And it's also the official online publication for the Broadcast India show. We will be having a Q&A session at the end of this. So please feel free to leave your questions in the chat box that you have on the right-hand side. And yeah, one last reminder, please keep yourselves on mute so that there's no disturbance when Philip and Mitesh and Manoj are having this really cool interactive session. All right, over to you, Manoj.
Hi, good afternoon to all delegates and a warm welcome to Philip, Mitesh, Priyan and the entire NM team. It's a very interesting session that we have lined up for today. The medium of cinema started with the use of film and changed gradually with the advent of digital cameras. ARRI's digital range of cinema cameras deliver unprecedented dynamic range, wider color gamuts, and incredible clarity to every image. And finally, what is cinema? Cinema is a visual medium. It's the visual which speaks for itself. So with this, let me start the panel session by asking my first question to Mitesh. Mitesh, tell us about your journey as a cinematographer and what attracted you to films and more specifically to cinematography as a craft.
So I worked on a film as a PA this is about 11 years ago. I worked as a PA and I was trying to find what's my calling. I pretty much asked questions to every department that was there. And I think what the DP was doing, I think at that time we were shooting on the EX3. It was a digital shoot, and it was super cool because the DP just had his camera on a monopod and he would just move around, and there were like 20-30 people surrounding him, and I was like, okay, who's that guy? Why is everyone next to the camera? So I think that was one of the major reasons to see how to see what the DP is actually doing, and then I started getting curious. I studied cinematography at the New York Film Academy in LA. And I didn't go to New York because it was freezing cold and I don't like the cold very much. So LA was a better option, it seemed, at the time. But honestly, it was just looking at what people do on set. That's what really attracted me to to kind of pursuing cinematography as a whole. And then honestly, once I studied it, I've not fallen out of love of the craft. I just love it to every single day, and I still keep wanting to find new ways and interesting ways of doing things.
Fantastic. Let me come to Philip. Philip, you have had an interesting journey as a DOP and as well as working for one of the leading camera companies. Tell us your perspective as to what interested you into the journey of cinematography and later on working with ARRI as a company.
The first of all, let me clarify, in presence of Mitesh and all the other great DOPs that are in this conversation today, I am not daring to call myself a DOP with the few music videos that I shot. But I have a huge interest in cinematography. I started out in the film industry pretty much the same. By accident, I became a PA on set and worked my way through 2 or 3 films in all different departments, like, production, art department, and even sound. And I was always interested what all those camera guys were doing. Like I was fascinated by the technology, and also, at that time when I started, everything was shot on film. So I was super fascinated by the power and the trust that was there to the cinematographer. And so I approached, at this time it was German DOP James Jacobs. I approached him and said, listen, I want to learn this. I want to find out not how to get your job, but I want to find out how to learn cinematography. And he gave me some good advice. He took me on, and then some others as well. So I worked my rank up through the camera department, being like a second assistant, first assistant. I pulled focus, and then once digital started over, I became a digital imaging technician. And this is actually the field that I liked the most. I applied to film schools who didn't bother taking me. So, and now I can happily say that I give classes at the same film school that rejected to take me on board. So that's
cool.
A satisfaction.
That's cool.
But other than that, I came to the Middle East, worked as DIT, and then at some point, ARRI contacted me if I wouldn't mind helping them out in the region, and this became bigger and bigger. And not just the Middle East, but also India, which I love a lot. So, I spend most time of my month in Mumbai, meeting all you wonderful people and being in contact for you with ARRI.
Fantastic. Mitesh, moving on to you. You have had a checkered career in terms of starting with ad films and then moved on to some really rocking films like Uri, Nirja. Tell us about your experience of working in ad films as well as feature films.
So when I came to Bombay right after studying, I came back. I live here. So when I came back, it was a battle, actually. Not really a battle, but it was like a tough fight to try to find a project that that gets me on as a DP. I tried contacting a lot of people to try and assist them, but you know how it is. It just always never works out. So I decided to take the plunge and go out on my own. And I said that, okay, if I start this journey, I got to go about doing that in that way. I think that's the only way to get it done and to reach out there and get, by really quickly. So I did that. I made a DVD back in the day, to make the DVD and the cover. I did all of that, and I sent it out to as many people as I could that would have me and that would meet me. And because of all of that, I got a Marathi feature film called Vakratunda Mahakaya, which when the director called me and he said, so Mitesh, I think I was 20 years old at that time. The director called me and said, hey Mitesh, can we meet? I want to talk to you about a film. I said, okay, cool. So I met him, and his name is Punarvasu Nayak. And he's like, Mitesh, hey, so I have this film and I want you to shoot it. I said, you want me to shoot it? I mean, as an assistant or like as a PA, or what do you mean? Like just hold the camera? Or no, I want you to shoot the movie. So I said, okay. That's fantastic. So pretty much began from there, where it really depends, when someone puts their trust in you, you need that one person to just say that, okay, I want you to, do this for me. And I think that's what he did. And that's what built my confidence from then on to the fact that, okay, I think I can do this. And honestly, the first week or the second week on set was terrifying. It was terrifying because I had no idea what was going on. I was so new. I literally came out of film school, worked on one job in my life, and straight on this Marathi film set. Luckily, it was so low budget that I was not allowed to call for too much equipment. But that was my first experience experiencing the Alexa, because I think at that time there was probably like just two bodies in India, if I'm not mistaken. This is 2011. But I started prepping on this in 2010. So there were only two bodies, and that's how it began. I actually emailed Henning at ARRI, and he was really kind because I had no idea how this camera functioned. And I taught everything. I've been taught everything on film and a little bit of the red, but I had no idea what the Alexa was all about. So I contacted him, and then it pretty much, we spoke, we exchanged a few emails, and I got an idea about what I need to pretty much do to get the image that I wanted. And I think at that time for me, it was just about learning and trying experiencing what I can do to get the best output from the restrictions and the troubles that I had shooting a low budget film. Literally, we finished that film in 21 days. So it was really low budget, and then it pretty much began from there, where all the other films just kind of tumbled upon. I mean, this is like a 11-year journey. It's not like it happened overnight, but it's a 11-year journey, which one film led to the other. The director saw my other film, which I shot, and he said that okay, let me hire Mitesh as a cinematographer. So that's how I got Love Shove, and luckily they was in the same office, so I got and every film pretty much teaches you so much about change and how you have to do things, you know. Like the Marathi film taught me how to work fast, like because it was low budget, 21 days. We were shifting 3 locations every day, you know, on a budget like this. We don't have the luxury of too much lights, equipment. Then the next one taught me how to work with you know, natural light, daylight, and then so on and so forth. Nirja taught me so much about just working in small and restrictive spaces, working without lights and all of those things. And even Uri, for that matter, just taught me how to be on my feet, shoot in restrictive locations where you have no access of putting lights. And it's just been a phenomenal journey up till now. I couldn't have asked for anything better at the moment.
Fantastic. So, what are the lighting approaches you adopt in your cinematography, and what kind of lighting do you use in your shoot? Do you prefer natural lighting?
Actually, before you ask this question, I have a question for Philip, because I actually want to ask him something where I've been struggling with this thing for a very long time. So Philip, I've been shooting with the Alexa for a while now, and there, for some reason, I feel like I'm not achieving the best output by the end of it. Like I'm achieving everything when I'm shooting, it's seeming great, it's correct. When I see it in the DI suite, everything is great. But when it goes out, when the DCP is made, I find there to be a certain kind of loss. Now, I don't know if it's the P3 outputs. I don't know what it is. So I want to know from you, is there something that you can suggest where I can improve, or some kind of tips of how to make this, how to sort this out?
So the first thing I can say is you're definitely not doing anything wrong. There is many approaches how to keep the image quality consistent, but the biggest step is usually somewhere between the DI, between the grading and the silver screen.
Right.
I'm not trying to accuse anyone, but I know for a fact that some cinemas, they are turning down the brightness of the lamps so they can increase the time that the bulb will serve them, because they are expensive to replace. And throughout the world, by the way, this is not an Indian problem alone, and calibrated screens are very hard to come by.
Right.
It used to happen, you know, once theaters had Adobe or THX certification, then they had to adhere to those standards, but then there's still tricks to get by them. So unless you have a guaranteed high quality theater screen, you will always lose some quality. It used to be the same, by the way, in the days of film, where you had the distribution copies used to be like the fifth or sixth daughter of the original or of the internegative. And the copy that you saw at the premiere of the film was so much better because it was the first print.
No, honestly, I saw the copies that went out to rural towns of my movies, and I was in tears. I was in tears to know why is that happening to my movie. And I mean, it's something that no one can solve, but yeah.
So and it hurts me in my heart as an image lover. It hurts me the best, but currently watching a movie over a streaming platform on an iPad is actually the most color accuracy you can get.
True.
It's The thing comes down to testing. Basically, if you have a film where the brightness of scenes are critical and where the color accuracy is critical,
Right.
then you could do yourself a favor, take your colorist, make a print of make a DCP, take it to a random cinema of your choice,
And then view it there.
View it there and see how it looks.
Fair enough.
What I did in grading sessions, especially on TV movies that were super dark and stuff, I bought at that time it was like a plasma TV. I bought it in the shop. I connected it in the grading suite, and I didn't change any of the settings or adjustments. So I left the monitor how my mother would have it when she and you would see the huge differences of quality there. So I'm not saying you should reduce the quality of your grade, but if you have critical scenes, you should double check them on a typical projection.
But it's tough to cater to the audience of the world like that, you know. It's eventually, because there's a director that told me when I shot Nirja, he said, Mitesh, let's grade it. Ram Madhwani told me, he's like, let's grade it so we can see it on our phones. But for me, it's like I can't cater to a mobile device, because every mobile device will have its own configuration that displays will be so different. I have to look at the theater and I have to grade for that, and then hope for the best, or look at every DCP or every output that's going out. If there's a separate output that goes out for Netflix, then I relook at it. If there's something else that goes out for something else, then I relook at that. I think that's the way.
One of my mentors told me that, and this is something to tell yourself for your inner peace, is nobody else would have noticed how good it could have been. So when I shot my first music video, I can't watch it now because I did so many mistakes, but guess what? Everybody else doesn't know them. I mean,
fair enough.
Let's put it that way. In the step from film to digital in projection, as much as I love film prints, the consistency of quality has become better because the prints haven't been run down 100 times to the same, you know, you don't have the scratches, you don't have any issues there. I know some streaming platforms are following through certain standards for TV manufacturers, that even TVs and iPads and phones look the same way. And I would wish that projector manufacturers and at least the multiplex theaters would strive to deliver the same quality, especially in times where they lose a lot of audience to streaming platforms.
Got it.
But I'm not sure who can make this call.
But when it comes to projection, if it's a 4K projector, suppose if it's a Christie or a Barco, is there a perception difference in terms of the image quality, what you shoot and what you see in the theater?
Basically, yes. Well, any screen, no matter if it's a projection or TV or anything, has to run through a certain kind of calibration, and the quality of a screen gets worse over time. Even our laptops and TVs, they get darker. They maybe don't show all the full colors anymore. And you got to make sure that whatever screen you have is within the acceptable range for the color space that you're targeting to, like like T3 in cinemas. So it's not a question of brand of manufacturers, but especially in projections, you know, the light bulbs, they just get darker, and cinema operators tend to run them till
they have a lifespan.
And they run them way over the lifespan. Most of the places.
So I just want to check, would you all want to have an interaction between both of you?
No, sorry, you can go ahead. I just had that question that
maybe
had to ask, so you can
a little later y'all could have
a
little bit of interaction between both of y'all. I think y'all have come up with some interesting question. Another question was with regard to the lighting. Lighting plays a critical role. So what is your approach to lighting as a cinematographer?
So it's evolved since I started out. Once I started out, my feature film was very real. I try to keep it as minimalistic as I can. But through commercials, it's transformed quite a bit. I started off lighting for others' expectation. When I came in, I thought that, okay, I'm doing a commercial which is pertaining to beauty or XYZ. And I would light for the expectation I thought that they had for me to create, And it took me a couple of years to actually come down to a point where I actually lit for myself. And I realized that as I work more with digital cameras, I realized that the Alexa and a lot of the digital cameras are very sensitive to light. And when I shoot with the Alexa, I literally have to have so much black to cut the fill light, because I don't like to use fill light. I don't use fill light at all whenever I shoot. It's usually just cutting the additional light that's falling and spilling, And it took me a while. Like, I want to actually share this clip that not these pictures that I had of this commercial I shot in the beginning, to show you the transformation from the beginning of my career, or the beginning to the later part, from what I thought that the world expected of us, as we're DPs creating this. So can I just share my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you guys see?
Yes.
Whoa. Okay. Okay. So it's a silly one, but I still want to show it because it's really important. It took me a while to understand this. Okay. This is a commercial I shot very early on. It was a massive beauty commercial that I got, and I don't know how I landed it, but it came my way. And okay, it seems to be loading. Okay. But if you just look at the light on her face, it's flat. I hate it. I would never tell anybody that this is my work. I'm just showing it to you guys so you know. And if you look at this image, if you look at the eyes, right, you can see the light in the eyes. You can see that there's a thermocol underneath. You can see there's a light coming from here. I don't like that. And there's no contrast. There's no separation of light. Even if you look at this image, it's flat. I know it's white, but it's flat.
We can't see your images. We just
you can't see my
folder.
images?
No, the images are not visible, Mitesh.
Oh.
Maybe you need to double click them.
You need to
wait. I need to do this again. Hang on. Can you see it now? No.
No.
Wait. Okay, 1 second. I'm gonna try to fix this. Screen share. It's not allowing me to share my desktop. Yeah, got it. Okay, I'm gonna ask you guys again. Do you all see the images? 1 second. Do you all see it?
No. Are you double clicking or how does it?
I am double clicking. Okay, I think I have to do this with the images open. 1 second.
Possibly.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see the images?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. This was that image where if you look at her face, it's flat. Like the light is like even the background, it's like extremely bright. And I probably wouldn't tell anybody that this is my work, but I just want to do it so that I share as a reference, from what it took me to evolve as a DP, to light in a different way. And even if you look at this image, look at her eyes. You can see the light in her eyes. You can see that there's a thermocol at the bottom on the right hand side, and you can see the light on the left side of her eye. And even this image, for that matter, I know it's all white, but it's just flat. Like, there's no contrast, there's no separation. So it took me a bit of time to understand this whole thing, and I'm going to show you what it transformed to after a certain point in time, because that's when I started realizing that, okay, I can actually do what I think may be right for a beauty commercial. And it flew, right? Everyone loved. So this is a commercial I shot for Lux with Deepika, and that was for Pond's. So you can automatically see the distinct difference between the light. This is a beauty commercial as well. There is hard light here as well. So it was there. I know the set and the background and the setting is completely different, but if you look at the face, it's got a mood to it. There's something happening in the image, so you feel like, okay, I can watch this. And likewise, even this image, you see there's a certain sense of separation happening between the two characters, and I mean between the space and her. Even here, there's contrast, there's shadows. So this is what I'm trying to explain. It took me a bit of time. Like in a beauty commercial, to have so much contrast, I don't think it's highly accepted. But it flew. Like they bought this. It took me a bit of time to understand how and when someone would buy something like this. And this is when I realized that I can actually start lighting for the way I think it should be lit. And this is what it led me to. And I think advertising also had changed. So that's what I wanted to show. Advertising also in general had changed over the years, where we are able to pretty much do things the way we want. And now I think you can see there's so much great work that's out there, and people are literally, doing some phenomenal work and pushing the boundaries for that matter. So for me, lighting was a journey. And after commercials, I mean, Neerja actually was my breaking point. It taught me, I used to light really heavy. I used to have a very heavy lighting package. Not that I'm saying that I don't anymore, but I use it smartly now. I used to flood the location with lights. Like I used to be sweating. I have pictures of me with my t-shirt sweating before Neerja and after Neerja where I'm looking fresh. So it literally is because of the director, where Ram told me, Mitesh, there are going to be no lights, no thermocols, no flags. And that got me to think where, okay, this is someone who's pushing me to the extent where I have to figure out a new method of lighting faces. And we had Sonam Kapoor, and she's an actor. I mean, everyone knows that all actors want to look great on screen, and especially a film like that. Over the course of the film, she realized, and actually before the film, she realized what we were trying to do, and she never looked at me and said, Mitesh, just a little fill light. And it took me that time to understand how to be minimalistic. And now I literally, if I'm shooting a day exterior, I don't need any lights. I need a flag. I need a 12 by 12 or 20 by 20 floppy, which is like a black skimmer. That's all I need. And I've learned over the years how to be minimalistic and how to be smart. For me, it's mainly about the directionality. I've learned over the years in terms of where the light is coming from is more important than flooding the locations with lights. If I usually like to light with single sources. Like how right now you can see how my face is lit. It's lit from one window. That's how I like to light. I light spaces. I like the ambience. And thankfully, that's what I've been doing all my years. I've actually lit spaces rather than actors. And thankfully, whatever I've shot, actors like Vicky, even Uri have understood that this is the nature of the project and they've let me do what I want. So it's actually an evolution, and I know it's going to change over the years. And I keep pushing myself if I haven't met directors that are already doing so, where I kind of give myself challenges of, so I've recently, I finished that where I said that I want to try and find a way to create the most naturalistic sun patch, where I kind of sometimes feel like, okay, it's not looking real. So I keep throwing myself these challenges and try to find a way where I can, push myself and try to find the best way to do this.
I have one question for Philip. Philip, ARRI film cameras, ARRI digital cameras have found a wide acceptance among the DOP community. How do you think ARRI scores vis-a-vis other film cameras?
With other manufacturers, you mean?
Yeah. In terms of what features are better that ARRI cameras are more widely accepted.
Well, I can tell you why I think our cameras are so widely accepted is because they give you very natural skin tones and a high dynamic range. They don't look too sharp, and the image that our cameras generate is pretty close to what you would have achieved on film negative. So the log C is pretty much something that a film scanner would give you from a film negative, and it's super easy to grade. You can it's very hard to push our cameras to the limit. That's the one reason, is the just the best overall image quality. And on the other hand, many people love our cameras because they're simply robust. You can take them to the desert. You can take them into minus 40 degrees Celsius in the Antarctica the next day, and you know, you can mount them on cars and really go crazy without having the fear that your camera will stop working because it's overheating. It's the reliability that just counts, I think.
Philippe, sorry to cut you off, but I had a question about this. Where is there a cap on how long can the sensor be exposed? Like, you know, everyone uses the camera, like, because in India, I guess everywhere, cameras are being used pretty much every day. They work more than I do. Any camera bodies, and you know, I reached out to you regarding a problem a few years ago or a few months ago. I can't remember, but I want to understand from you: is there a cap on how long you can use a sensor?
In terms of hours, or like working hours, like on a car, or?
No, in terms of working hours, in terms of how, because what happens is I've seen the sensor being overworked or worn out, not a lot, but a few times. You know, I've seen a few times where the sensor's overheating, but that's normal, right? I guess. But is there a time or a cap that, okay, don't use the sensor post 3 years or 5 years or?
So far we have had, you know, in our service cases, we have even had cameras with 12,000 sensor hours and they still work fine. It's usually other things that would break first. Definitely sensors can get bad pixels over the years. We have features in our cameras and in the software that we provide. So you can paint out dead pixels and the camera automatically accounts for it. Also, we have accounted for that as well in a sensor. So a sensor is allowed to have a couple of dead pixels over its lifetime. I mean, to be sure, I have no number. I can't say don't use the camera after 50,000 hours or so. Because I don't have this experience yet. And no, I mean, if it's an old camera, I mean, you do procedures anyways. You test every camera before you go out to shoot with it. So if there's any issue, you would find it. And the guys from Cineom, they run our service center in Mumbai. So if there's any question, if you are not sure if the sensor is still up to specs, then we can always check it and give you a definite answer.
Got it.
And most of the camera rental houses in India that I know of, they do regular service on their cameras. So they have, you know, we have extended warranties, we have service contracts. So, and it's pretty affordable to just have your camera checked and be sure. I think that's part of the business model of every rental house, to be able to provide a working camera that will make them more money over the years. So, no, like, sensors getting too old to shoot on is a problem we don't really have now.
Okay, that's good.
The only problem is laser damage. Never shoot lasers with your cameras. It goes for any digital camera. But that's something pretty obvious to see in the pictures then.
So Philip, is there anything you would like to ask Mitesh in terms of the movies that he has done? You wanted to do a brief interaction with him. I leave it open to you, Philip, in case.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've also seen there's a couple of questions from our participants, so I don't want to step in there too much. I have a couple of questions. I saw on Yuri. I saw on.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Go ahead, Philip. You can ask those questions.
What I really enjoyed in Yuri was like pretty much, I think it was in the first or the second chapter of the film, the big scene where the army goes into the terrorist camp, and you know it's a huge forest, and the camp is in the middle of it, and it feels like it's lit primarily by fire. So this is a scene I really enjoyed watching, because I was like, I hate myself when I watch a movie and I see, holy shit, how did they shoot it? Then I know it throws me out of the story. But you know, being a filmmaker,
I know what you mean.
Have these thoughts, and so I would really like to know how you approach the lighting on this, because of course it was a pretty low light scene. You had high contrasts, and the
Right.
danger in such situations is always how can you keep enough light level? How can you keep it dark enough without the fire being overly overexposed?
Right.
So
So it,
yeah,
it, it pretty much began from prep, where I knew that I wanted the entire sequence to be lit, because the director told me that, okay, these guys come in and they blew up the small camps that they have. So for me, instantly it was, okay, I'm going to use the element of fire. But then soon I realized that, okay, what am I going to do before the fire? And I personally, I'm someone who doesn't enjoy lighting with moonlight. I don't. Even in Uri, I added a little bit of green to that moonlight because I didn't want it to look like moonlight. I wanted it to be just ambient or some sort of light coming from somewhere. But it mainly was because they're going to be blowing everything up. It said that I needed to start the sequence with that blue moonlit night, low light sequence. And actually we had a few practicals that were set up there as well, just to see a few things, silhouettes, just so that, there's a separation between color. It's not all blue monochromatic. And even where on the flip side, where the army was, actually we had a nice color separation with the night vision goggles that they wore. For me, it's a lot about color separation as opposed to how I'm going to light, because for me the direction of the light is already set in my mind. I know where the light's coming from all the time, pretty much in my head, because of so much time of working. You just you kind of know where it should come from in a way, or it's more driven by sources. So it was more about how do I create the separation so that the light and the tone doesn't become monochromatic. So I started by thinking about those things, and then I figured I incorporated those colors with that, and then I wanted the blue light to slowly fade out as time passes, because I wanted the fire to overpower the light. Because for me in my head it was like, okay, since if you have any other light source you can't see the moonlight, or if you don't have any other light source you usually can't see the moonlight. So my idea was that I'll fade it out as the sequence goes forward, so it's just literally overpowered by the fire. And I think Vicky was really kind to be okay with being shot in silhouette, because we shot a lot of that in silhouette. And I think when you get that kind of reassurance from the actor, it allows you to push it even further. So it's a lot of other things that come into play, when you have so many people who are collaborative, and the director was also open. He was a little hesitant about the darkness of the frame, but I think he really understood. The trick for me was, the reason why it didn't feel that dark to me, or to a few people that I know, I can't speak about the world, but because I try to have highlights in every frame. So once you have highlights in every frame, you're actually looking at the brightest point. And then you don't necessarily think it's a dark image. If you have too much black, or if it's low contrast, or it's soft, then you don't know where to look. So I made it a point to always have some sort of highlight, so you never feel like it's too dark.
Mm. How hard is it to convince an actor of this grandeur to? Would you have this discussion? Does the discussion go through the director, or how do you approach this? Telling you, listen, in one of your first hero shots of the movie, we're actually not going to see you.
Well, unluckily, it was the director's first film. It was Vicky's first big thing. It was my first kind of big thing in this scale. So we were kind of all newbies, and it was me and the director discussed how we wanted the film to look in the beginning. And sometimes the perception of darkness of 2 or 3 different people is very different. So he said, Mitesh, I want this film to look dark. And then he showed me a few references, which were dark according to him. And I lit the film the way I thought darkness was. And that's how it pretty much went. And honestly, no, Vicky and I did not have the discussions, because again, we was just so excited about the whole process. And once you realize that, okay, things are working and things are looking good, and then at the end of the day, the narrative point should come across. If the story is coming across, it's fine.
I think that's the beauty.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of this creative process on set, when everybody's pulling on the same string. To just say, listen, this is gonna be a great movie. This is not gonna be about me only. And I think this is what I enjoy always on set, when you see, okay, people doing something, way out of their comfort zone, and then being
the collaboration is the most important. I think that, and I've been fortunate enough to work with the same crew for a very long time. And I think that's what keeps me going every day, because I know those people and I know how much effort they would put in for a project that we're doing. So that for me is like the biggest thing on a film set.
Now, when you, especially in URI, you were shooting in two different countries.
Right.
So I saw in the credits you went to Serbia, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you manage to keep consistency between all those shots? And I mean, I'm not entirely sure which shot has been shot where, but I have my thoughts about that. So, and I think sometimes you've been jumping back and forth quite a bit.
So lucky for us, we had multiple different locations that we had to pass off. We had Kashmir, we had Pakistan, we had an array, we had Delhi, we had an array of locations to pass off. And actually, I don't think there was Bombay at all. Like we didn't have Bombay in the film at all, if I'm not mistaken. So it was really simple actually, because when we went to Serbia, there was so many different locations that looked like those particular places, like the forest, the final terrorist camp that we found was actually built for the most part. And the production designer, Aditya Kanwar, came in and he literally like did his magic and of course fixed a few parts and built a few walls and sections. Of course, they were not entirely built. So I think it was mainly just those things which were available to us. And when we went to Serbia, it allowed us to go to so many different places there. Like we went to offices that looked like a certain place in Pakistan. So we found multiple locations like that in one place. And in India, at Delhi, we cheated in Bombay actually, because we didn't have the budget finally when we came back to Mumbai. We didn't have the budget to fly to Delhi because we exhausted everything in Serbia. So we cheated everything in Mumbai for Delhi as well, So we literally, this film was all cheating. And eventually, I think, again, I'd like to think that if the story and all of those things are strong and you're not deviated from the narrative, you won't look at those things, Even if I look at it and I know that, okay, that's a cheat, but it was an easy blend to just match. And the good part was a lot of it was night. So I could just choose not to light a certain section. Yeah. I mean, that was also budget reasons, but...
I have a question, Mitesh. In terms of location, how much say does a DOP have in terms of choosing the location? Or is it the director who says that this is the location where we have to shoot?
So the DP plays a very important role, of course, when it comes in. But I'll tell you a story of Uri, because it was my first as well, where things happened differently. So we actually did a scout in Serbia and we left because we were just there for a week or something like that. And the production designer stayed back to do his bit. His name is Aditya Kanwar, and he stayed back to do his bit and he actually ended up finding the key locations that we could, because we didn't find them. We were thinking, how do we do this? We're probably going to build it. And he ended up finding them and he locked them because he sent us a few pictures and we were like, it's great. And I didn't need to worry about it too much because it was night. If it was day, I would have been a bit more frenzy about it, where I would want to know where the sun is and how we're going to shoot it. So luckily for me, it was night. So, but usually on another project, I was prepping for a feature before the COVID hit us. And it was literally about me, the production designer and the director. We three kind of come together to decide why one location is going to be chosen over the other. There were a lot of locations, unfortunately, that were bounced because the light is not right. I mean, the sun is in the wrong direction and we can't shoot. And schedule wise, we had to come here in the evening. So I had to say, no, this is not going to work. So a lot of it, and sometimes the production designer would be like, no, this is not period correct. So it's a lot of variables that come together to pick a location.
What I would like to know, another question, because I've seen now your films and some of your commercials. How do you approach camera movement? When do you choose handheld? When do you choose a Steadicam or any other stabilizers or crane? I mean, crane shots are obvious, but dolly movement. And then the second part of it, if you're doing handheld shots, and in handheld shots, maybe put that the first question. In handheld shots, I have two different opinions from people. Some people say they want the cameras to be as small and as lightweight as heavy. I don't want any, monitors, attachments and stuff to the cameras. Yeah. Others says, and sometimes I'm pretty surprised, others says, listen, I want the camera heavy, big, and I have no problem.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that? And
so I'm going to answer the second question first, because it's there's a funny story to it. But every time I've shot a movie that is supposed to be handheld, which is Nirja and Uri, I wanted to shoot with the Alexa M when I was shooting Nirja, because we literally had 40-minute takes, and that's not a joke to put an SXT on your shoulder, which weighs 25, 30 kilos. It's not easy. But lucky for me, we did not have any Alexa M's, and the Mini wasn't out at that time. So I had to shoot with the SXT at that time. And honestly, I always had that, even with Uri, you know, I wanted to shoot with the Minis. They weren't out or they weren't available. We wanted to shoot anamorphic. You know, they have that sensor thing when you shoot anamorphic with the SXT, you can't go higher frame rate. So I had to pick the SXT again for Uri, you know, and things like that. So, but having said that, when I go handheld in Nirja, once you have the camera on your shoulder for 40 minutes and there's so much happening, you forget about the pain, is what I've realized. You forget that you have a 30-kilo thing on your shoulder and on your hand. So I've learned that over the years, that comfort for me is not a choice. I mean, it's not a choice. It's whatever is available at the time. Because also we don't have access to all sorts of equipment. Sometimes it's availability, sometimes XYZ. So whatever best I can achieve out of that. But I've signed up for the LF for my next one if it happens. And we have no handheld in it. So I'm very lucky that way to have the SXT on a handheld shoots and the Mini on non-handheld shoots. And to answer your first part,
first part is when do you approach which style of camera movement?
So it's usually when we are working on the script, we sit down with the director and break out the movement and try and figure out what's the motivation of each scene. And I've been fortunate enough to work with friends who are editors, and they've really helped me. And I've learned how to think like an editor at times when we're working, you know. So when we're cutting from one scene to the other, if we've moved in one shot and how it's going to cut, and for me, it's usually about what's the motivation of the scene. Why do we need to keep it static? Like the director told me, Mitesh, let's try and move the camera in all the conversation scenes in Uri. I said, why? The actors are sitting and they're talking. There's no need because the dialogues there are very important. We need to listen to what they're saying. If I move the camera, it's going to be distracting. So for me, the logic is simple, where either let them do the action or let me do it. Let's both not create a mixture, because then there'll be confusion.
Yeah. Okay, now we have a lot of questions from the delegates, so I would like to address some of those questions to both of you all.
Yeah.
The first question is coming from, what is that? How would you decide the aspect ratios before any shoot, Mitesh? Is setting up a cinema camera harder than a high-end SLR?
So aspect ratio, I think a lot of the big commercial movies in India, sadly, are always shot 239. I mean, it's not a set rule, but it's based on, if I'm paying money to go watch a movie, I want to see every inch of that screen. I don't want to be cutting the edges off. So I've not been fortunate enough to be able to shoot 185. Not that I've felt the need to, but if I go back, I would have probably shot my Marathi film in 185. But I didn't, because at that time, it was my first feature. I said, I have to shoot CinemaScope and I have to shoot 235. But I haven't found the need as yet. I've struggled of shooting Nirja in 185, but that option changed because we wanted to shoot anamorphic. So it didn't happen. It usually is on the basis of the theater screens for the most part. I know a lot of my friends who've struggled when the film is released, you know, to let the word out that, guys, it's a 185 film, but the projectionist is playing it at 239 because he's used to watching it at that. So there's a risk involved, and you know, a lot of people don't want that risk. It's something that you need to kind of make sure you're backed while you're doing something like that.
One question to you, Philipp. What is the importance of depth in creating a cinematic image? Philipp, if you can shed some light on that.
Depth, I mean, that's always depends on the story, but I think if you layer up your image, you know, you have a foreground, you have some background, and you create this depth, I think that's a very important part of it. And then by choosing the stop on the lens, you can decide on how blurry the fore and the background get. You can isolate the character, or you can show him in the entire space. So in my opinion, depth is important. not just related to a very deep open space, even in a very tight, like in a car interior, you can create depth and layers. You keep your image interesting. And I saw DOPs, you know, you have like a discussion happening in front of a window, it's dark outside, and they would place certain lights far back in the background to just add another layer of something that you see. So yes, that's very important.
Mitesh, there's one question. Would you prefer shooting with 3200K lights at 3200K camera, or shooting with 5600K lights with 5600K settings?
Is this K money? Are we gonna get some? I'm just kidding. No, I'm. No, basically, see, it depends on what you're shooting. If you're shooting a night interior, then I'm. It's a lot of people work differently, because eventually these are just tools that you're setting a basic look at. Eventually, you can change it in post in DI, which is what usually people do. But I don't work like that. But what I try to do is, if I'm shooting nights, I usually expose it at 3200. If it's a day exterior, depends on how warm or cool I want it. It'll be 4800, 5600. Depends on honestly what I'm shooting.
Basically, camera sensors. Most of the camera sensors are most sensitive at 5600 or around the 5000 area, just because this is what our main light source on this planet is delivering us. Our sun is somewhere between 4500 and 10,000 Kelvin.
Yeah.
So of course, always depends on the air quality, but nowadays you have very, very blue and fresh light. So this is just what you're having out there, and this is why cameras are mostly sensitive, or sensors are built for that color temperature. And everything else is luckily a super creative choice. It's not written in stone. You can, you know, you choose any color temperature that you want. You use colored lights and turn it out or turn it back later in color grading, which can give you other ways of designing a look. That's a super creative choice that depends on your project.
Tell us about the relevance and importance of HDR from a DOP's perspective. Either of you can take that.
Oh, so see, since the cameras are so sensitive now, honestly, I get scared of HDR. But again, it depends now. Now where it's restricted, it's mainly on like a computer screen, like a TV, and your monitor has to be HDR compliant. The theaters aren't, you know. So I'm okay with. For me, I used to enjoy showing certain kinds of detail wherever I want it. If I want to show darkness, I want it to be black. With HDR, I'm a little hesitant about it at the moment, but I need to research and learn about it a bit more to be okay with it. But Netflix, I know, is only taking HDR, but you have to work a bit harder to keep the blacks black. And there's too much detail, which I don't necessarily want to show the audience, because for me, I know everyone has a very low attention span, you know, so you have to direct the audience into the place you want them to look at. If you have so much information everywhere, like I don't know where to look. So my opinion right now, I'm a bit hesitant, but all the stuff I've shot for Netflix, I have been able to achieve a certain sense of darkness, but it's a bit tricky when you have to light. I mean, not that I do anything different with the light, but it's just tricky when you grade. So I just crush the blacks a bit more. So it's a process that for me is still in evolvement as an individual. I still need to work more on it. And I still want HDR to kind of reach the theaters and all of those other places to be able to experiment with it a bit more.
I think HDR it can be a very nice tool at hands. And the good thing is you don't always have to use the entire dynamic range that the screen or the HDR process will give you. I'm happy to say that ARRI cameras, since the very first Alexa, are capable of delivering HDR because our sensor have such a high dynamic range. So most of the magic will happen in color grading. And of course, if you want the blacks to be black, then HDR is perfect, because you can have blacker blacks than
Normal.
Normal, and then you can choose for yourself how bright you want the rest of the image to be. I think it will still take some time until every colorist has developed enough experience to help you out in HDR, but I've seen some beautiful shots in HDR. We have, ARRI has an HDR show reel. If you ever manage to come by to the Cineom office, we can show you our HDR footage, which has been shot on where the shots have never been designed for HDR. This is the beauty of it. So they have been shot for 709 and standard dynamic range. And then in terms of grading, there's a lot what you can do. And it's not just the brightness, but also you can intensify the colors a little more, because every color has now this enlarged brightness spectrum. It's, I think it takes a lot of experimentation to find out your visual language with HDR. Right. It's not just a switch that you can switch on and say, hey, now let's make HDR and everybody's happy. It, as you said, you are not sure if you want to show every detail which is visible in camera. So it takes a lot of time to get adjusted for grading HDR, but I've seen very beautiful shots in HDR, and the problem is I don't want to go back to standard dynamic range anymore.
In terms of DI, there is a question: how do you choose colors or the types of colors to grade a film? Is there any methodology you follow?
For me, I usually bake in the look while I'm shooting. I mean, by that, what I mean is that I keep my colors there. I don't change color. I don't like to spend too much time on DI, where you know, selecting things and tweaking too much. I like to be a bit more sure of what I want to do before we actually go into production. And I try to pick colors with the production designer and tell them that, okay, can we have this colored light here, this color light there, so that there's enough color separation in the frame where I need to create. Sometimes there'll be a thing where if I find like an image is looking too monochromatic to me, I might do add some color in the shadows, but that's very rare, and I've kind of grown over that over the years. But it's usually baked into the film.
So we have some interesting questions from aspiring cinematographer, currently students. Is a film school a better place to learn cinematography, or is it better to learn on the sets of a movie? Mitesh, your take.
Honestly, both. And I can't speak for anybody else, you know. I mean, my experience has been, I've been to film school and I loved it. I learned a lot. I had no idea about, I had no technical knowledge about cinematography. The school I went to gave me a lot of hands-on experience, which I really enjoyed. And again, I learned confidence and a lot of other things on set. So for me, both of them played a very important role in my life, you know, learning. And every time I visited a set, or I've visited a few of my friends' sets, I learned something new. And I can't say that only film school is important, because I've learned so much equally on both ends. I mean, now much more on set, because I've been much more on set, but I think both of them are very important. And honestly, it's everyone else's journey. It's each journey to its own. Like, this was mine, but it doesn't have to be yours. It can be something completely different.
The good thing about film schools is they make you shoot. You have to shoot films. And there was another question in the chat before: what can I do to get more work or to get more contacts? Shoot. Take any camera you have. And every one of us has a camera now. And I don't say this lightheartedly. Take any camera, create some beautiful shots. You don't need big lights. You don't need special lenses to create something beautiful. Experiment with the way that light hits faces and how a light lights up the room. Go out, explore, see what light is doing. At what time of the day does a certain tree look the best, or where's the light coming from? And if you do something like this, you know, the more you shoot, the more experience you will gain. And the beauty of film schools is they make you shoot. You have to shoot, and you get good contacts. And this is then a good base to go out on a set and learn the real stuff.
Interesting. Is there, have you all been inspired by any American DOP, both of you all, whom you know, look up to in terms of kind of work they've done?
I mean, it's difficult not to be inspired by people's work. And I don't want to name anyone specifically, because I've learned a lot from every single movie I've watched. sometimes what to do and what not to do. You know, it's an experience. And also I've realized that I evolve with, there's a certain thing that I like at a particular time, but then I hate that 5 years later. It really depends on where I am and what I'm shooting at that moment. I've definitely been inspired by a lot of the veterans work in the States, in India. The reason why I studied in LA, but I chose to come back is because I wanted to be where I am at home. And I love a lot of the work that our Indian VPs are doing. And even the stuff that they did in the 60s is so beautiful at that time. I mean, I've been inspired by pretty much everything I've seen.
There's a specific question on Alexa. If you shoot on Alexa setting the sensor at 3200K, is there a possibility of getting noise on any of the color channels?
Philip.
That depends on your exposure levels. So, I mean, if you use it in bright daylight and at 3200, no, definitely no noise. If you use it in a very dark scene, yes.
And there's another question for both of y'all. How to overcome the blur in the image while panning? Any precautions other than shutter angle and panning speed?
I'm going to let Philip answer that.
Quick answer is no other precautions. Because shutter angle and panning speed and viewing frame rate, so project frame rate, they determine the shutter effect or the blur. So this is basic physics, which so far nobody has overcome yet.
I mean, sometimes I've learned a trick where you can actually have someone in the foreground while you're panning, and then sometimes, you know, when you have something moving with you while you're panning, sometimes you don't notice the blur.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, no, it's not. And it's not just about panning speeds. It's also about objects that move within a frame from left to right or right to left. The higher the contrast is, the more visible the problem becomes. So if you have a dark background and you have a bright object going left to right, it's definitely more visible. This is, by the way, also an issue in HDR. When you shoot HDR, you can see that more clearly. So you need to adapt your panning speed or scene contrast. And
yeah, I had a problem that I'd reached out to Philip about the same thing. Actually, the camera was static and we had a subject moving from right to left. And we tried a couple of different things where we tried panning, we tried, moving the dolly and moving. We tried moving at the same time the subject wasn't, but there was a certain kind of blur and a jitter. And then I think, do you want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, it's basically, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm saying objects are moving too fast. Actually, the speed where this appears for the first time, where you can see it, it's not actually that fast, which is the issue. So, but yeah, these have been standards, but this is physics, which we all can't come by. Either we can try to hide it and play with the shutter angle. Unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer than that, but so far, no. Okay. It's only you only try to work around it.
I'll go with, I just have the last two questions because we're just running out of time now. And most of the other questions, I'll try sending it to both of y'all. Maybe y'all could answer it over the email, which the delegates have sent. So the second last question is, how do you set white balance on set? Is white balance on camera useful?
I think we already answered that in a way.
Okay, then I go to the other question. What is the basic grading difference for backlit and frontlit projection? What is your approach to it?
I don't think I've ever shot back projection. I have no idea. I would imagine you'd leave it the same way. I don't think you. I don't know the answer to this.
No, no, you wouldn't grade differently for that. Because again, you hope that the screen is calibrated to the same levels than any normal screen.
Philip, there's a very
thinking. Yeah.
There's a very specific question for you. Can you point us to some ARRI resource where aspiring cinematographers can learn more about the cameras and lighting, like brand tutorials, guidelines, etc.?
So a good starting point is our website, arri.com, where we have a section which is called Learn. We have a lot of white papers. We have a link to our YouTube channel. We have, we do tech talks. And then the other big thing, which we have launched 2-3 years ago, is the ARRI Academy, where you can sign up for classes, workshops, and we're doing them worldwide. So I'm actually in charge of doing this in India as well. We do the academy, we do master classes, we give online workshops. And right now we also have, in cooperation with MZ, an online class for our cameras, which you can buy. Then we also do free events like this talk, or I have another talk coming up on Friday evening, which is about our signature prime lenses. So, follow us on social media, register for our newsletter on the website, and then you have full access to everything we apply.
One last question for you, Mitesh. How do you manage to shoot in multiple exposure in one shot with ARRI cameras?
I haven't done that. I don't think that's possible with ARRI. I think that's a red thing. Philippe, is that true? I don't think it's possible with the Alexa. Shooting multiple exposures.
Shooting multiple exposures? No, you would. If you have a scene where you need to adjust the exposures, then usually you just change the iris. Either yourself while operating, or you have a focus puller, change it.
I mean, what the tricks that I've used is if we're shooting something that I have like a window in the corner that's overexposed, what I do is I just, depending on what the move is, I just do a pass for post later on. I just cut the exposure and I do the same movement again. So if at all there's some problem, then I can just select that and tweak it around in post later on. But honestly, with the Alexa, I don't have to do too much of that because the latitude of the camera is amazing.
Unfortunately, the session could go on for another hour, but
I have a question for Philippe and for
yeah.
Cineom, since I have both of you all here.
Sure, please.
This is gonna be basically, I've been trying to get the 65 to India and shoot with it for the past, I don't know how long since it came out. So my question is why, and we've got the rates. It's tough, man. It's tough to afford it for a Bollywood film of any scale at the moment. I mean, it's a two-part question where I have a suggestion where why can't Cineom or someone figure out to get a camera body and where we're able to at least experiment and test it out and shoot with it. I know there are very limited bodies. I've been told there are about 62 or 63 bodies in the world, but maybe getting a body or two into India somehow so that we have the opportunity to shoot with those bodies and kind of explore the idea of shooting with a 65. And I mean, I've been fortunate enough to travel to test those cameras and test those lenses, but it's like when you have the equipment that you want to use that's far away, and I mean, ARRI doesn't make any because there's a lot of duty, there's government issues, this, that. I don't know how to resolve those things. If all of these things happen, it's going to become very, very tough for us to shoot on that camera. So is there a solution? Is there something we can figure out to make it work?
The simple answer is plainly, and you said it already, it's the budget.
Yeah.
It's I mean, in India, rental houses are killing themselves by offering camera packages for ridiculously low prices. Yeah. And then the ARRI Alexa 65 is rental only from our own rental house. I don't want to announce the price because it always changes on the project duration and on the time that you're asking. I think right now, if you want to get a 2 or 3 camera package from us, you can get it for quite a decent price because I think they're all sitting in the shelf. But the other end is, and you're not the first one to inquire about this camera. I get a lot of inquiries for the 65. In the end, it always came down to, I have to choose between this camera and or getting other lights and extra equipment on set. Yeah. So it's a budgetary question.
I mean, if you do get this camera, even
we can figure out. That's easy. Cineom is an expert in helping us because usually those cameras would come in on a carnet, so they go temporary import. That's not the issue. The issue is basically most of the time I get the reply, "Oh, sorry, we don't want to afford it." And then also, the reason why we actually built the Alexa LF is We have figured out that many people are using the Alexa 65 in the so-called 5K mode. So they're not using the full sensor, they window it down. And that sensor size is exactly the same as an LF open gate. So most of the time the LF would jump in and replace the 65 on those shoots. And also the next question is, why don't you make it cheaper? We have a long waiting list on those cameras. Usually, you know, people apply for these cameras like months ahead.
Right.
Shoots get rescheduled to be able to shoot on this camera. So I don't think this will be a very easy thing. But I mean, we're always happy, and if you have the request, you can always hit me up directly, and we can see what we can make work.
Now that I know you, I will hit you up directly.
Please do.
About this.
Lastly, I would like to thank Mitesh and Philip for having participated in this webinar, and huge thanks to Priyan for the entire support he and Santosh have given. And last but not the least, the entire Broadcast India team, Varun, Gaba, Pranali, Kashika, Guru, and all the NM team. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
And all the delegates, thank you very much for joining in.